And even as you're talking about the concept of fatherhood, you're a father, you're a husband. Mm-hmm. And what does generational healing mean to you? Especially as you are working on your own personal healing journey. One thing that I always remind people is that when you do the inner work, it's not something that's an isolated situation. It's just like a lot of people are focusing on generational wealth. You can pass on language of healing. You could pass on actions and behavioral habits of healing. And so what does that look like for you, and how do you help your clients or your male clients recreate that for themselves?
Vulnerability, allowing yourself to be vulnerable in every space and being able to show up in your authentic form. I think for me, getting personal, this is the first time I've ever shared this on a large platform. People close to me know this, but when I was 8, I was sexually molested by an adult male cousin. And that caused a lot of toxic masculine behavior for me, of a feeling the need to kind of like prove my masculinity. And it created a cycle that I knew that was good, that was unhealthy. As I got older, I was like, okay, this isn't healthy, right? This is really negatively impacting my ability to engage in healthy relationships, right? I never saw what that looked like because of things that have happened, generational things that happen within my family dynamic, and of course my own trauma. So what does it look like for me is allowing my 13-year-old son to see me go through therapy, right? I talk about, when he asks me, hey, how are you doing? I don't hide how I'm feeling for him, right? This whole notion that a child needs to stay in a child place and you don't supposed to put things on. I agree with that to an extent, but what I want to do is say, I tell my son, listen, if I'm going to tell you that, hey, it's ask for help, I want you to see that your dad is also asking for help, right? And when he asks me genuinely how I'm doing, I would tell him, hey, I've had a rough day. When I'm really struggling in this past year, this past November, December, I was in one of the hardest places of my life outside of losing my parents, where I experienced anxiety and depression. And I had to, go to see a psychiatrist and more so my primary care for medication. But I really had to lock in with my therapist, right? And I was genuine with my son about what it is that I was experiencing, right? By being transparent with him, it allowed him to see like, hey, even though dad is also human.
Yeah.
Right? Dad is also human. And dad isn't saying that he's too strong or too masculine to ask for help. Right? He asked me, hey, how was your therapy session? Oh, it was good. Or it was tough. Like my therapist challenged me on a lot of different things. Right? So I'm having these conversations with my son about these things that are happening, right? About my mental health, because I want to encourage him to say, hey, if something is going on with you, I want to encourage you to also seek support. And that to me is breaking that generational curse, or that generational trauma that were passed down to me by my dad and my mom, right? So it's allowing him to see like, hey, you talking about your mental health is the most courageous thing that you can do. So just really opening that conversation up and saying like, listen, dad struggles too.
Yeah.
Right. I'm not exempt from it, for not at all. I say, hey, I need a hug. Right. Do you need a hug?
Yeah.
Right. Just because you're a man, I'm not gonna, I try my best not to treat my son and my daughter different as far as how I respond to them. Right. Listen, I'm big on embracing my son with love. I'm big on saying, yo, I love you. I'm big on checking in with you, how you're doing. That to me is breaking generational curse. My wife brought up a good question. We were traveling back from Virginia, and she asked me, and I had never been asked this question, never had to think about this. And she was like, how are you shown love when you were growing up, when you were growing up? And I was like, man, no one ever asked me that. I never had to think about that. And I think for me, it was more so acts of service, right? I wasn't told I love you a lot. It was my mom just made sure she did X, Y, and Z for me. And that was a way of showing love, right? So then that makes me think about, how am I showing love to my kids, right? When they get older and they reflect back on how are they showing love, how will I be able to say, hey, this is what I did to show them love? Right. So I make sure that I tell my son, I love you. I make sure that I say, yo, give me a hug. Right. I make sure that I'm engaging those acts of service and things of that nature. And that for me is really breaking those generational curses that have been passed down to us for generations and generations.
Yes. Oh, Avery, that is so good. And shout out to your wife for asking that question. Isn't it so cool to be married to another therapist? It's just
is. Yeah, conversations get deep sometimes.
Right, exactly. Oh my goodness. So I'm hearing you're giving the gift of self-awareness. You're also giving the gift of honesty as well, like putting things out in the open and allowing him to be able to, I guess, normalize what it looks like to heal collectively, so to speak. I think that's so beautiful. And like, even when you're talking about the conversations and whatnot, I don't think you know this, but a lot of my listeners know this. The reason why I'm in the field today is because of my father. So when I moved to Atlanta, my father was experiencing suicidal and homicidal ideations. When we were growing up, he had like huge levels of depression, but back then we didn't know what that was. We just thought that he was just angry and frustrated, but we knew that he loved us and showcased his love towards us. It's just whatever anger that he had, he would just exhibit it in other ways, or binge eating or watching TV and things of that nature, loss of interest in the things we once enjoyed. You can go down the entire list. But once we figured out that it was depression, that's when I transitioned into the mental health field from the entertainment industry, because I was trying to figure out how can we take this information and make it a norm for us? How can we get out of the rat race of living from paycheck to paycheck and challenge all of those stigmas that are associated with us, the strong Black woman syndrome or Superman syndrome, and all of those things that society has placed on us, or the ways that we cope maladaptively with the systemic pressures that we experience as a people. And so, like you mentioned, it's so important now that you have the information, learning to pivot and change. Ever since my father, because in Florida they have Baker Act and we have 1013 here. And ever since he was Baker acted, even though he doesn't see a therapist right now, the thing that sticks out to him the most is that group therapy component, sitting there listening to other people's stories and recognizing that, I have a lot to be thankful for in this very moment. And ever since then, it created opportunities for healing conversations, getting to know, why are you the way that you are? Like, what led to this point? Things of that nature. And for me, for us, we have like genograms and whatnot. We have clients go through that. For anybody who doesn't know what a genogram is, you're literally taking your family tree and you're looking at specific behaviors. So like, for example, if divorce runs in your family, you see that. If suicide's running your family, you see that. Blase squaze. And so you're literally taking the time to see, okay, what led to who you are today? What experiences, what traumatic events, like your villain origin story, so to speak. And it's very beautiful to see that. And
it really is.
And the things that you're doing with your family as a collective, I think that's beautiful as well, because you're writing that new chapter for the next generation and the next generation. So
absolutely.
Hey, lovely. Shout out to you, because I know mental and emotional wellness is important to you. If it wasn't, you wouldn't be listening to this podcast. But lean in really quickly, because I know sometimes it's really hard to create a plan and actually sticking to it. So let's take your mental health to another level. Ever wonder what keeps you from fully executing? Ever wonder how you can build the confidence for decision making? Well, guess what? You're not alone, and I'm here to help. So head over to mentalhealthgoals.com for your free mental health plan. It'll give you practical strategies for addressing your current mental health needs. But first, you got to tap in. So head over to mentalhealthgoals.com to receive your free mental health action plan today. Do it right now. mentalhealthgoals.com. See you soon.